discuss the Leetcode 3847 problem. So let's first try to understand the problem and then we'll see the approach to it. So you are given an integer array nums where nums of I represents the points scored in the ith game. Okay. There are exactly two players. Fine. The first player is active and the second player is inactive. This is initially. Okay. So let's go on writing it. What are the information that has been given to us? So we have been given with an nums array where the ith index basically shows the score of that ith game, right? Okay. Then we have also been given with two players. So here comes your player one and a player two. And initially the player one was active. Initially player one is active. Fine. So these are the information that has been given to us. Now, the following rules apply sequentially for each game I. Okay, so let's see what are the rules. If nums of I is odd, active and inactive players swap their roles. Okay, so swap their roles means the player whoever is active becomes inactive and the player whoever is inactive becomes active. Okay, in every sixth game, that is game indices 5, 11, 17. Okay, so these are the indexes of these nums. But active and inactive players again swap their roles. Means the same thing that whoever is active becomes inactive and whoever is inactive becomes active. Okay, so basically they swap their roles. The active player plays the ith game and gains nums of 5 points. Okay, fine. Now we have to return the score difference. Now let's see how the score difference has been defined. It has been defined as the total score of the first player minus the second player. Okay, fine. Let's see one test case and you will easily get what the question is trying to say. Okay, so the test case is something like this. My nums has been given as 2, 4, 2, 1, 2, 1. Okay, and let us consider that player 1 is the first player. Okay, so player 1 is active currently. Okay, now and your here comes your player 2. Player 2 is inactive. Okay, and let's say define something like where we can store the points earned by player 1 and player 2. Okay, so let's say this is the point earned by player 1, this is the point earned by player 2. Initially the points would be 0, right? Okay, now I goes to 0. Okay, so this is the first index. Now as you can see the first index value is 2, right? Since 2 is an even number, so will they swap their roles? No, no one will swap their role. So since my player 1 is active, this 2 will comes to player 1. Okay. Now index I equals to 1. Now this is again 4. This is also even. So there will be no swapping of roles. Means player 1 will be active now. So again 4 will come to player 1 only. Then next let's go to I equals to 2. Here again it is an even number. So the role will not be swapped and so the score 2 will come to my player 1 only. Then we came to I equals to 3. Now here comes the catch. See, this is an odd number. So since the nums of I is an odd number, according to the given rule that when the nums of I is odd, the active and inactive players swap their roles, right? So this player 1 will become now inactive since the role will be swapped and the player 2 will become, right? Okay. So which one will take this odd one, that is one score? It will be taken by the active player. And which one is the active player now? Player 2 is the active player. Okay. So one thing which you have to keep in mind that first check the roles of each of the player according to nums of I. And after that you have to assign the score to them, right? As we did here. Okay. Now let's move on to I equals to 4. Now, since this is an even number, so roles will not be swapped and this score will go to the active player. Now, this time your player 2 is active. So it will come here. Next, we move to I equals to 5. Now here comes an important catch. Okay, so keep this in mind. And that is why I took this example. Now for I equals to 5, as you can see, for index I equals to 5, as you can see that your nums of I is an odd number, right? That implies roles will be swapped, correct? And after swapping the role, the player 1 will become active, right? Because here you can see that player 2 was active. So by swapping the role, player 1 will become active and player 2 will become inactive. Okay, so player 1 will become active and your player 2 will become inactive, right? Okay. Then after this, what another rule is there? In every sixth game, that is game indices I equals to 5, 11, 17, active inactive player swap their roles again. Okay. So since I equal to 5 corresponds to sixth game, right? Whatever has been given in this condition, again, roles will be swapped. Okay. So this order you have to follow. First you have to check the rule 1, then you have to check the rule 2, and after that you have to go and assign the score according to this rule. Okay, so role will be swapped means again your player 1 will become inactive, right? Because as you can see here, the player 1 had become active, right? So again this role will be swapped and player 1 will become inactive and player 2 will become active. Okay, so we have checked the first point. This was your rule 1 according to these three given rules. This one was rule 2. We have checked it. And now comes your rule 3. And what is the rule 3? That simply assign the score to the active player. Okay. So since my player 2 is active, so player 2 will get the score of means it will add 1 to its score. So finally 1 gets added up in the score of player 2. Okay. Now this is my final score list. Let's check the total score of player 1. It's 2 plus 4 plus 2. It's 8. And let's check the player 2 score. It's 2 plus 1 plus 1. It's 4. So what is the score difference that has been defined in the question? The score difference has been defined here. It's defined as the first player's total score minus the second player's total score. Okay, it has been clearly defined in the question. You don't have to take any absolute value of the difference. No. Okay, simply do whatever the question says. So we'll do the player 1 score minus the player 2 score, and it will be 8 minus 4, that is 4. Okay, one thing keep in mind, don't change the order. Okay, first player minus second player only, because it has been defined in the question. Whatever be the value, it might be possible that player 1 has a less score. So there don't think that we have to take a positive output only. No, that is not the case. Player 1 is small, is having a small value, that is completely fine. The final score difference will come out to be a negative value in such a case. Okay, fine. So now let's try to code it in the problem. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So first let me take the size of this nums array. Okay. Then what we are doing? We are defining two variables, that is count 1 equals to 0, which will store the scores earned by first player, and count 2 equals to 0. Okay, so these two variables, count 1 and count 2, they are basically storing the scores of player 1 and player 2. Let's take another boolean flag. Okay, so it will say that whether the player 1 is having an active value or not. Okay, so player 1 underscore active, initially it will be true because it has been given in the question that initially the first player is active. Okay, so player 1 active equals to true. Okay, now let's try to iterate in the nums array. Okay, first you have to go according to these three rules. First rule one, then rule two, and then finally comes the rule three. Okay. So let's check the rule one first. If my nums of I and 1 means if my nums of I is odd. Okay, so I'm using a bitwise operator here to check whether it is odd or not. Okay. So if it is odd, then what I have to do? I have to just reverse the role. So in order to reverse the role, what I'll do? Player one underscore active equals to just negation of player one underscore active. So it will just swap the roles. Okay. Now let's check for rule two. If my I modulo 6 is equal to 5. As you can see here, whatever the indices has been given, 5, 11, 17, whenever you will take the modulo of these indices with 6, you will always get 5. Here you can see for 5 modulo 6, you will get 5. For 11 modulo 6, again you will get 5. Same for 17. Okay. So this is the case to check the second rule. So if the modulo gives me 5, then again I have to swap their roles. So player 1 underscore active equals to negation of player 1 underscore active. Okay. And after checking the rule 1 and rule 2, I will finally apply the rule 3. Okay. So if my player 1 underscore active is true, so the score will go to count 1 plus equals to nums of I. Else the score will go to count 2, right? The player 2 will take that score. And finally, I have to return just the difference. Okay. So count 1 minus of count 2. That's it. Okay. So all the three test cases, sample cases passed. Let's submit it. Yeah, there we go. 100% acceptance rate. Okay. I hope that you got the problem, how we have to do this. And if there is any query, you can write it in the comment section. Thank you.